2030 agenda. We will now hold a ministerial forum, and I'm very pleased to welcome to this ministerial forum on promoting multilateralism to realize inclusive, resilient, and sustainable recovery from COVID-19 in the context of the Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development and its social dimension. I would simply like to say on this point that there are a number of global leaders who are addressing this issue, and perhaps quite often I think of Pope Francis because he has called on all of us, in particular global leaders, to think about how we can come out of this crisis better and not worse. We must bear in mind the absolute need to rebuild multilateralism based on solidarity. This pandemic has shown how weak we are and the need for us to build bridges between individuals, between nations, and between regions. And that being said, within this high-level ministerial forum, we will have an opportunity to assess the multilateralism we need in order to face the major challenges before us. It is absolutely essential to look at the opportunities that international communication can provide, north-south, south-south, and triangular cooperation, so that we can move forward on achieving SDGs in light of the pandemic. And we must also promote the capacity of nations to meet their mandates. But as chair of the Commission on Sustainable Development, I would like to say that we must not just bear in mind plans, but we need to know, we need to be able to listen to each other. We must open our ears and listen to representatives from various regions of the world. We did that yesterday, we should do that today. A lot is going on in regions throughout the world. So I would invite you all to listen to what is being said today at this level. And I now have the honor to introduce the distinguished panelists. His Excellency Daniel Arroyo, Minister of Social Development of Argentina, Ms. Arriunsaya Ayush, Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia, Her Excellency Julian Seifert, State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth of Germany, and Mr. Anar Kariman, Vice Minister for Labor and Social Protection of Azerbaijan. I would like to recall and remind distinguished panelists that if at all possible, please stick to 10 minutes for your statements. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Daniel Arroyo, Minister of Social Development of Argentina, to make a statement.
Ministro Arroyo, la palabra está.
Minister Arroyo, you have the floor.
Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank gentlemen who are here with us in this very relevant forum. It is an honor for me to represent Argentina in the ECOSOC CSOD, but it is also an opportunity for me because we have a compatriot, Ms. Skeff, chairing this commission, and I wish her every success chairing the 59th session of the CSOD. I'm going to divide my presentation to two sections. The first, it has to do with the policies we've implemented in Argentina under COVID in a very critical situation. And secondly, what challenges are we facing ahead? Basically, in Argentina, in terms of social approaches, we have three goals within the pandemic. One is to maintain, ensure food sustainability, because a portion of our population is facing food shortages. in a country where 40% of the population are working, is working in the informal sector, we have to address that issue. And we have to rebuild through work. So we have these three main objectives, and we have a series of policies. The first has to do with food assistance. Prior to the pandemic, we had 11 million people receiving food assistance, and there are many more now. There are 45 million people in our country. 11 million are receiving food assistance. Means that we need to have a number of food policies in place. There were assistance policies in place prior to the pandemic. We have a food card. We have a food card which can be filled up every month and allows the family to receive food assistance. And during the pandemic, we are providing food for 11 million people. We've had good coverage in terms of the number of people we're assisting. But now there was a drop in the provision of vegetables, meat, and dairy products. So we provided additional assistance in the last few months of last year, particularly in December. We ensured that 55% were able to, of the individuals receiving food assistance, were able to buy these products. So it was not that easy to do in Argentina. We were facing nutritional shortages. We weren't able to provide high quality food. Now, secondly, in terms of income, in the second quarter of last year, in April, May, and June, that was the most critical time. Almost 90% of the economic activity dropped. We set up a number of programs to assist individuals so that we could keep family income coming in. One is that we provided coverage for businesses. So half of the salary was covered for these individuals working in the private sector if they lost their jobs. And then we addressed the informal sector. We set up a program to transfer funds to 9 million families. We created the IFE, the Family Emergency Fund, which provided assistance to 9 million families in Argentina. We're speaking about people working in the informal labor market or who have very little income. So that was it. We were able to sustain the situation, maintain levels of consumption, although there was an increase in inequalities and poverty in Argentina, but we set up mechanisms to help these people. And then we had a policy which addressed our youth. Clearly, during the pandemic in 2020, there was an increase in educational inequalities. And one key point that we moved forward on, and ECOSOC is working on these issues as well, and that is to close the digital divide. And so in this very complex year, we had families and children who were left out of the educational system. We had families that were not so affected, but the families that were affected, some families have just one cell phone to share with the entire family. We weren't able to contain the situation, and so that's a major challenge we're facing. The third policy, our third goal, has to do with the labor market. We've set up a system for 800,000 people to provide half of the minimum salary in Argentina. That's 10,300 pesos. That's the minimum. So how do we help these individuals? We give them a basic income. We felt that we needed to provide at least this minimum. This is 5 productive sectors. We're addressing food production, construction, textile industry, the healthcare industry, and the recycling industry as well. So we have focused on food assistance, on maintaining income and providing these projects. So we've been able to weather the storm. Today, we have a 10% extreme poverty level. And if we had not set up these programs, the food assistance card, the family emergency fund, that figure would be at 28%. So we're still facing a critical situation, but we've been able to mitigate the situation somewhat. We think that this meeting is extremely important for us within the framework of sustainable development to make sure that no one is left behind. We have these three objectives that we're dealing with this year apart from combating the pandemic. We are hoping to create 300,000 jobs in the informal sector. What type of work are we talking about? We're connecting these projects with the private sector work that is being done. Our objective is to provide employment in the 5 key sectors I mentioned earlier. And then there are 4 million Argentinians who are living without basic service. They don't have water, sanitation, and in that area, we are going to be improving 400 neighborhoods in Argentina because those are the neighborhoods that still do not have running water. So we are going to be ensuring access to these basic services, improving housing, making sure houses have kitchens and bathrooms. I'm speaking about populations living in flood zones. We're going to carry out these urbanization projects. We see this as absolutely central in terms of social development. We have now, it's up to me now to draft this law to have a fund so that we can carry out these urban improvement projects. We are also addressing early childhood. We see that more children are living in extreme poverty, so we want to ensure healthcare coverage for all girls and boys, making sure that they can go to preschool, they can go to daycare centers. We're targeting children between the ages of 3 and 5. We're going to be creating centers for these children. I think we need to combine work and right. The right to housing, that's a major concern, and there are many people working in the construction industry. Then children have rights as well. They should all get off on an equal footing. There are many people working in construction and many people working in the care sector and in community pre-K centers. In 2020, we had to target the labor market and food assistance, but this year we're going to be urbanizing 400 neighborhoods. We're going to be providing 300,000 jobs in the informal sector and addressing the issue of care for children. We are learning from these lessons, and we're interested in seeing what is being done in other countries. We should be addressing the most important issues internationally together. I would like to thank Ms. Skeff, the other panelists, and all other participants here. We are the ones who will come up with the ideas in fora such as this so that we can exchange views. I'll be listening very closely to the upcoming panelists. We have to ensure a fairer world for everyone, in particular for those who have the least. No one should be left behind. We see international cooperation and South-South cooperation as the hub for support through international mechanisms. apart from economic support, we need to be taking on board ideas and concepts and new paradigms. That's a very important dimension, and we believe that for Argentina, 2021 is going to be a year of rebuilding. It's going to be very difficult. There's going to be social conflict, but this is our year to rebuild in those 3 areas that I mentioned. Thank you very much for giving me these few minutes to share our approach with you. Thank you very much to the Minister of Social Development of Argentina, His Excellency Daniel Arroyo. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Ayush, Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia, who will make a statement.
Humanity is facing a new type of coronavirus pandemic, which is inevitably challenging our world. In Mongolia, the State Emergency Commission, consisting of members of the government and governors at all administrative levels, was established already last year in February 2020 to prevent, to fight, to mitigate negative impacts of the global pandemic. Furthermore, State Emergency Commission on Population and Social Protection was established at our ministry, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. The difficult situation during the global quarantine of COVID-19 requires us to take the most coordinated action to support people, their employment, stimulate economic activities, social protection in order to revive the economy. Of course, given the disaster preparedness situation in Mongolia, the government has taken urgent actions to preserve and protect jobs, wages, incomes, support households, livelihoods, to provide social protection. And following steps were taken, such as Parliament passed the law on exemption from social insurance contributions and provided financial support from the Unemployment Insurance Fund. The law was critical because it laid the foundation for providing financial support to employers, preserving and protecting jobs, avoiding interruptions in the payment of social insurance contributions, and enabling citizens to receive pensions, benefits, and expenses from the Social Insurance Fund. In addition, the Parliament passed the law on exemption of social insurance payers from fines and penalties for not paid contributions in time. The implementation of the law has created favorable conditions for preventing additional financial pressure on economic entities, organizations, as also individuals. Also, we had policies such as cash benefits for social pension was doubled. Child benefits, child support money has been increased 5 times and given to almost all children. So we had almost universal child support money. The food stamp program was also doubled. These actions have played an important role in protecting and supporting the real incomes of people, especially those, of course, in need of social care, such as elderly, people with disabilities, children with disabilities who need long-time care. All this has, of course, helped preventing the spread of infectious diseases. During quarantine time, learning activities at all levels were organized through e-learning and distance learning systems. The delivery of a remote learning experience has been recognized as one of the best practices also. During the UNICEF, UNESCO, and the World Bank jointly organized webinar on hybrid learning approaches shared with the regional offices, also by UNICEF. Madam Chair, Mongolia pursues comprehensive, flexible, and sustainable socioeconomic policy to achieve sustainable development goals, poverty reduction, inequality elimination, as also ensuring social well-being. The Vision 2050 long-term development policy was developed by government of Mongolia in accordance with the concept of sustainable development goals and endorsed by Parliament of Mongolia in 2020. The Vision 2050 policy envisions smart and sustainable governance with the aim of creating a well-organized civil service, digital technology-based, citizen-centered public services to ensure human development and expanding public-private partnerships at all levels, with full support and respect of human rights, a system of justice and society free of corruption. In today's era of globalization and digitalization, the government of Mongolia aims to balance the labor economy, create a knowledge and skills-based economy, reform the social insurance system, optimize social welfare, increase employment, expand the middle class, as we all wish for, and improve the quality of life of Mongolians within the framework its long and medium-term employment promotion policy. So the government of Mongolia is currently revising the labor code, labor law, social security and social insurances. And we aim during these difficult times to make advantage of technologies accessible to everyone, provide public services in a balanced and equitable manner without any discrimination, digitalize the entire sector, and make services transparent, fast, and affordable to everyone. In line with above mentioned, the government is working towards implementing e-government at all levels and gradual integration of all public services within e-Mongolia program, which is creating an economic databases as information sharing system, smart government. So the future, there is a necessity of coordinating policies, regulations to promote employment, reduce unemployment, and in order to change the pro-welfare attitudes among the public, prevent the from overexpansion, devaluation, and the inefficiency of social services, and move towards an intensive, person-centered, and socially oriented approach. With the global pandemic, the ongoing transition of electronic online services across all sectors is one of the reasons we need to accelerate our digital transformation. And it is important to organize and promote, of course, step-by-step e-learnings at all stages in order to meet the growing need to improve digital literacy for all the citizens. With this, I thank you for your attention.
Like to thank the Minister of Labour and Social Protection of Mongolia. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Julian Seifert, State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth of Germany to make a statement. Ms. Seifert, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for the invitation to today's Ministerial Forum. I'm really delighted to take part and to share some of the experience we took in Germany and in the European Union in the last year. The global pandemic has started more or less 1 year ago, and it has made one thing really clear. The COVID crisis is a global crisis, and the crisis can only be solved globally. So multilateral cooperation and international solidarity are crucial for defeating the virus. No country in the world will manage to do so on its own. COVID-19 has an impact on all countries in the world, but the effect it has can be very different depending on where you live. It makes a difference if you have access to a stable health system, for example. It makes a difference if housing and public infrastructure allow for social distancing or not. It makes a difference if your government can provide enough vaccine doses for its citizens. Developing countries have only received a fraction of vaccine doses used worldwide. That is why the European Union is contributing 500 million euros to the program COVAX of the World Health Organization. The program is designed to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccines reach the poorest countries in the world. Germany has pledged an additional 100 million euros to COVAX. In the European Union too, we had to learn that we can only end the pandemic by acting together in a spirit of solidarity. The conviction was also the basis for Germany's presidency of the Council of the European Union in the second half of last year. Based on our motto, Together for Europe's Recovery, we laid the foundations for sustained economic but also social recovery of Europe. To this end, we agreed on a long-term budget to support especially those member states that were hit hard by the pandemic. With a total of 1.8 trillion euros, it is the largest stimulus package ever financed through the European budget. This finance package will help repair the immediate economic and social damage caused by the pandemic. But it will also help rebuild a better post-COVID Europe, a greener, a more digital, a more resilient Europe, and last but not least, a more social Europe. The recovery gives us the opportunity to build a better future, a more social future for all of us. Therefore, it is not enough to focus on the recovery of the economy alone. Economy recovery has to go hand in hand with social justice and decent work. In Germany, for example, we have taken extensive fiscal measures to stabilize the economy and secure jobs, because it is even a social question. Our most effective tool to protect people from job losses and to prevent a massive rise in unemployment is our short-time work allowance. Most recent figures from Germany show more than 2 million people are in short-time employment and receive state benefits. During the first wave of the pandemic in April, the number was up to 6 million people. As a consequence, unemployment has not increased significantly in Germany. So far, we have met our goal to save as many jobs as possible. To support all European Union member states in doing so, the European Union introduced a short-term work scheme itself. We mobilized 100 billion euros to help workers keep their incomes and keep businesses running. This is a good example of European solidarity in action, and this is what we need worldwide. To end the pandemic, we need, on the one hand, solidarity between the states, but we also need solidarity between those who are affected the most by the crisis. To this aim, it is important that we focus on the needs of the most vulnerable groups of society. They need our support now more than ever. For example, children and low-income families. Already before the crisis, around a quarter of all children in the European Union were at risk of poverty or social exclusion. The pandemic has made the situation worse, and it is a major challenge for children and their families. Closed schools and preschools make it difficult to reconcile work and family life. Furthermore, many families are in a financial distress as a result of short-time work or job losses. Tackling child poverty is therefore more important than ever. In Germany, we have taken several measures to protect children and low-income families in the current crisis. We increased financial support for low-income families. Parents can take additional days for which child sickness benefit can be claimed while schools and preschools are closed. For a lot of parents, this means being able to keep their jobs and their livelihoods during the pandemic. We made also sure that the professional child and youth services remain operational. And we expanded online counseling services for parents and children. These are important steps we took nationally. However, the protection of children must also become a clear priority worldwide. Yet much remains to be done at national, regional, and international level. Let us continue to cooperate closely and effectively to tackle the challenges posed by the pandemic in the best possible way. The post-COVID world will require more solidarity and cooperation to meet the promise of the 2030 agenda. Germany is committed to doing its share. Let us all join forces for an inclusive, resilient and sustainable recovery from COVID-19. Today is a good start. I'm happy to be here with so many of my fellow colleagues. It shows a strong commitment to our common multilateral effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth of Germany. I now give the floor to His Excellency Anar Karimov, Vice Minister of Labor and Social Protection of the Republic of Azerbaijan. You have the floor. Thank you.
Organizing such an important event during current COVID challenges. I believe the topics we discuss at this esteemed platform are pivotal. We should regularly share the best practices and social know-hows. It's timely and it's valuable opportunity to exchange ideas and to lay out the plans for joint actions for socially just and prosperous future. Improvement of social economic welfare is at the core of reforms that we're conducting in Azerbaijan currently. So the gradual growth of social expenditures during recent years is a vivid evidence of that. Even in the times of crisis, protection of population income and prevention of welfare deterioration has been always in the focus. So the important social packages that were introduced 2-3 years ago had a significant impact on improving the well-being of vulnerable groups. It served as a critical social support for the population in 2020, especially during the COVID pandemic. Another tool is a targeted social assistance, which supports social protection of low-income population and is also an active tool in the fight against poverty. To eliminate the negative consequences of the COVID pandemic, special programs has been adopted in April 2020. The anti-pandemic social program stipulates mainly 4 areas to support employment and social welfare. So it covered almost a half of the population of Azerbaijan. So it covered approximately 5 million persons in Azerbaijan. So the first area was the protection of public sector employees, where it was very important to prevent unjustified dismissals and layoffs. And these activities, which implemented, were able to secure 900,000 jobs and wages. So during the pandemic, almost 80% of this segment were not able to attend their offices. They were able to secure their jobs. Another area was protection of private sector employees, because during the pandemic, the Ministry of Economy, Social Ministry, National Confederation of Entrepreneurs, and Confederation of Trade Unions acted jointly. It was a good sign of social collaboration. They issued recommendations and instructions to employers to adhere to the principles of social solidarity in the fight against the pandemic. Employers were given recommendations, electronic warnings were sent out, and daily monitoring was conducted. So it helped us to save the number of labor contracts in the private sector, which not only decreased, but in the contrary increased by 24%. So it allowed during 2020 to additionally attract approximately 150,000 labor contracts to the formal employment segment. The third area was social protection of unemployed persons, and in order to ensure the active employment of unemployed people, 40,000 paid public jobs were created. These jobs are minor works which don't require very high education, but still financed by the state. So during the quarantine regime, additionally 50,000 paid public jobs were created. In parallel, as another social tool, 600,000 people were registered as unemployed and they were paid a lump sum cash payment. So totally, approximately 265 million USD was used to cover these 600,000 people, which makes approximately 6% of the population. We tried to use also electronic systems, so an electronic information system, which is called informal employment control system. It's helped to monitor the labor market during the pandemic. Especially the new self-employment program is currently implemented. Advantages of this self-employment program is that it covers different business startups in various areas like agriculture, services. It may be implemented in any geographical area without limitation, plus the beneficiaries receive 2 months business training. So it was quite successful. It started since 2016, and during this short period of time, we have already good social partners like UNDP, World Bank, even private banks joined this initiative. And the last area where we were focused were providing social services at home to elderly person over 65 years old, because these people were as a target risk group, and they received different kinds of social services like purchase of goods, medicines, utility payments, and so on. And during the pandemic, when we covered approximately 15,000 such elderly, lonely households, which are very vulnerable, and in parallel, 110,000 families received different kinds of food packages. In parallel, different vulnerable groups received tuition fees subsidies, like families of martyrs, refugees, people with disabilities. So in total, approximately 400 million US dollars were spent only on employment and social welfare support. So as a result of these measures, the principle "no one left behind" was observed, and sustainable and inclusive social development was ensured. In closing, I would like to thank you all participants for the contribution to the important forum. Thank you very much.
We are the ones who are grateful, we, the members of the Commission in particular, for the excellent statements by the 4 panelists representing different regions and different problems they're facing in today's world. There are some common elements in all of these statements. All the countries, all of the representatives rather, the authorities who have spoken, Argentina, Germany, Azerbaijan, and there's one more, Mongolia. All of them have highlighted primarily the issue of state policies that have been adopted in specific areas and how important they've been in addressing this major COVID-19 crisis in a world that already was facing socioeconomic problems. You have all referred to the absolute need to bear in mind the most vulnerable. You've spoken about the need to maintain employment, to maintain salaries, and to ensure social protection measures for families, for women, and for children. And one representative spoke and provided figures about the contributions coming in from a number of organizations to provide support to other states in greater need. All of that means that we need to have greater links, we need to listen to each other more, and we need to share experiences. As your chairman, I'm going to propose to the Bureau and to the entire Commission that we keep all of these very interesting statements at hand, because they could be useful to other countries wishing to follow the same examples. I would now like to have an interactive dialogue. I would ask you, please, to make comments and pose questions to the panelists. Please use the dedicated speaker request form accessible on the chat board of the Interprefy portal, which is up on the screen. And please do that within the next 3 minutes, because after that, the list will be closed. And I'd also like to remind delegates that interactive dialogues serve to pose questions and make comments directed at the presenters. And so the delivery of written statements is strongly discouraged. And I would ask that statements be brief and concise. Having said that, I will now give the floor. Who do we have on the list? We have China, followed by Argentina. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, distinguished panelists, for your excellent remarks. Fighting the pandemic is the top priority for the international community, and vaccines are the important weapon with which we can win this fight. However, when it comes to delivery of vaccines, we see a huge divide between the North and South. According to the WHO, whereas 49 high-income countries have delivered or acquired most of the vaccines. However, many least developed countries are yet to receive vaccines. Vaccines must be an accessible and affordable public good. China is actively fulfilling its commitment to making Chinese vaccines a global public good. China has already provided vaccine assistance to 13 developing countries, with another 38 to follow. China has provided 10 million doses of vaccines to the COVAX in support of developing countries, and China will continue to contribute to improving both the accessibility and affordability of vaccines. Post-pandemic reconstruction is the priority. According to the report of DASA, in 2020, the global economy has shrunk by 4.3%, with 140 million fewer jobs and 131 million more people living in poverty than in the previous year. Reconstruction in the wake of the pandemic is a long and treacherous journey. We need to focus on both short-term bailouts and strengthening policy resilience. We should stay committed to the vision of people-centered development by increasing investment in health, education, public services, and other areas impacting people's livelihoods. We need to beef up assistance to developing countries, lighten their burden, share with them development opportunities and outcomes, and promote the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through debt cancellation, technical support, and development assistance. Humankind is a community with a shared future. When it comes to fighting the pandemic or post-pandemic reconstruction, multilateralism and solidarity and cooperation is the only way out. For its part, China stands ready to make a greater contribution to building a better world. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of China, thank you very much. Argentina, Cuba, the Philippines, the EU, and Burundi are on my list. Argentina, please. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. We would like to thank the panelists for their statements, and we thank them for sharing their very valued views on multilateralism and cooperation as we tackle COVID-19. We believe that we need to take account of the various tools to promote social cohesion within COVID-19. We have South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, and that can be very important because it will provide innovative examples, providing a greater ownership for the countries in addressing the pandemic. I would ask the ministers to think about this issue and see if they can share their views and their practice on linking South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation with the concept of a broad and multifaceted social development to improve living standards, but also to ensure inclusive a sustainable approach for more productive societies. Thank you. Thank you very much, Argentina, for your comments. I'm going to now give the floor to the Philippines. Philippines has the floor.
Yes, yes. Hello, good morning from the Philippines. Yeah, so I'm attending this virtual meeting coming from across the world. And this one reminds us of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in our very lives, that indeed we live in a VUCA world. And we do this from way back, but yet this pandemic has shown just how unprepared we were to this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situation. On the other hand, this has shown us the way we can navigate through such a VUCA world. So in the Philippines, we have actually embraced this multilateralism and partnerships in order to cope with this crisis. We thank the World Health Organization, for instance, for helping us better understand the dynamics of the COVID-19 transmission and how we could protect our citizens from its lethal effects. We even reached out to our development partners, uh, to the development planners from our neighboring countries to find out how they are coping with this crisis. Of course, we had to enlist the cooperation of everyone as we restricted mobility, social and economic activities, and observed public health measures. We engaged the academe, research institutions to provide us timely information, even the business sector. And right now, we're building partnerships for vaccine procurement and necessary logistics. Equally important, of course, the role of multilateral financial institutions like the World Bank and the ADB, and we have tapped them to help various initiatives from increasing PPE supply, procuring test kits, and supporting adversely affected families. Of course, equally laudable is the effort of the WHO and the European Commission in coming up with this COVAX facility. Now, the next big challenge is for multilateralism to work towards building the resilience of every individual, in every family, and in every country. So we have seen that there's really tremendous social and economic costs for everyone. But we have also seen that there's great inequality in the extent to which some peoples are able to protect themselves from this COVID-19, but some are not. And the challenge is really to make sure that going forward, that each one has the resilience, has the wherewithal to be able to cope with such a crisis. And as we begin this 10-year countdown to 2030, we face the grim reality that COVID-19 pandemic has actually resulted in a major setback. We may not even achieve the goals we have set as a community of nations unless we all recommit to making multilateralism and partnerships work. We need to reaffirm our resolve to leave no one behind, beginning with ensuring equity in access to vaccines and medicines. Because being in a globalized world, the health and well being of everyone depends on everyone else. We also need to improve access to information, knowledge, technology, and development finance. And finally, we need to harness all our creative and innovative minds to recover from this crisis and build resiliency going forward. We should, as one humanity, embrace this challenge of a VUCA world. Thank you.
I now give the floor to Cuba. After Cuba, we're going to turn to the ministers to ask them to make a few comments. And then we will have the European Union and Burundi. Cuba now has the floor. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And we're very grateful for the discussion we are having today. We think it's very relevant, in particular in the context of the pandemic. We were already living in an unequal world. There were greater privileges for the rich, and yet most people were facing poverty and inequality. there will be, sadly, many people facing malnutrition. In addition to that reality, we are facing COVID-19 with its immediate and long-term socioeconomic impact, and it will further create inequalities between countries and within countries. It has also been regrettable and criminal to see that developed countries have which already had an advantage were involved in a race to find vaccines and to treat their own people first. This impacts our human development, socioeconomic development of all countries. It also has a negative impact on our ability to combat the pandemic, and it is in this context that Cuba recognizes the work being done by the United Nations and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights within the context of the pandemic. In Cuba, the US embargo has not only been maintained, but it has been increased in an unprecedented fashion in recent years. It is inhuman, and we do not wish to see this policy pursued. But we will not yield in the face of this embargo. We have our own vaccines against the pandemic, and we have the ability to produce many more vaccines than our own population would need. 3,400 Cuban professionals have provided modest support in combating COVID-19 in 39 countries. As has already been said, the pandemic is a global problem, and we can only tackle it together. Inclusive, resilient recovery, which is sustainable, will contribute to social development and will protect the most vulnerable. And that needs the involvement of everyone. And therefore, we absolutely must prioritize multilateralism, international cooperation, and in particular, support for developing countries. And again, we must promote solidarity. Thank you. Thank you very much to our colleague from Cuba for her statement. Let me now turn to the ministers and vice ministers who are our panelists this morning to ask them if they have anything to say or any comment on what they've heard. Let me begin with Minister Arroyo if he's available.
Agradezco los comentarios.
Thank you very much to China, Argentina, the Philippines, and Cuba for your comments. Just a few brief comments that reinforce what each of you have said. First of all, bolstering international solidarity and multilateralism. Obviously, we need collective action, we need support, we need South-South cooperation. That's very significant for Argentina. We need to have not just strategic global decisions, but we have to have an exchange of experiences. And I agree with strengthening international solidarity. Alberto Fernandez, our president, has mentioned that many times. We have to bolster multilateralism. Secondly, we have to have sustainable growth. Clearly, COVID-19 has clearly shown the levels of inequality and pre-existing levels of poverty. It has also shown how difficult it is for a segment of the population to remain well nourished. Alberto Fernandez has said, we are not going back to the old normal. We're going to create a new normal. So all of that has been clearly seen, and we need answers to that. And we believe that we need to establish a series of citizens' rights based on which we create conditions that are necessary, and that we obviously, if there's a full vaccine coverage, that will be very helpful. And we, countries in difficulties, need to have support in this area. Also, I'd like to focus on resilience and inequalities to rebuild the capacity of each country. I think it's high time for us to have the right conditions to establish criteria and policies. And I think this ECOSOC meeting is very important for that. We believe in Argentina that all children should be should reach the secondary school level. There should be not any hunger. We should have enough food, and there should be access to work, to basic work for our youth. They're the ones who are the most impacted. These are three basic rights for our citizens, and we believe that international cooperation will help create the conditions to ensure resilience. Two additional issues. The emphasis placed on poverty, multidimensional poverty. We have to address the food issue. We have to address the housing and infrastructure issue. There are a number of realities that the poor are facing in Argentina. They're excluded. If a family is poor, then their parents are poor, their grandparents are poor. This is a critical situation, and we need to move forward on this issue. We have to update the infrastructure, and we need to address the issue of poverty. And finally, and I'll just close with a comment, we have a new social contract. What does that mean? It means growth, it means development, and everyone will be involved, with possibilities for everyone in our population to have access to basic services in the 21st century. And digital inclusion is one of these basic services in the 21st century. Access to water, to housing, to basic needs. Clearly, they are part of people's rights in the 21st century. And we believe that these conditions are related to multilateralism and international solidarity. So I would just agree with all of the comments that have been made. And Argentina is prepared to cooperate. And let me pick up on the words of our president. We don't want to go back to the old normal. We want to go to a new normal and create a new society. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Arroyo. I give the floor to the Minister of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia to ask if she has any comments to make. Thank you.
Pandemic, we have talked about digital economy, digitalization, the losses of employment, and the changing of the world. So the same as a medal has two sides, the global pandemic, as much as bad it is, it has also good sides in it, such as bringing us together, closer, and the new digital economies are raising, and we are getting used to it. We are now having even this conference online. We are working all from home, working from distance. So it is new old for us. Even for the world, the air emissions, the pollutions are dropping, for example. The world itself is kind of healing, and we are all taking step back and rethinking about of all our well-beings. So with this, I'd like to say, stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive, and I hope we can see us in person next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I would like to know if the Vice Minister of Azerbaijan and the State Secretary of Germany have any comments to make on this first series of Q&A. Thank you.
Should I start? Okay. Okay.
The floor to the representative of Germany.
Yes, as many speakers before, I want to underline that we have to pay attention in a multilateral way that the inequalities and vulnerabilities in our societies, but even between the states, should not and must not increase because of the global pandemic and because of COVID-19. And this even means that we have to focus more and together on social questions to keep our societies together and to make our societies on regional level, on regional, national, and even international level as equal as possible. And to aim this on European level, we are currently working on a strong implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights. And this means, for example, including measures for decent work, like a fair minimum wage, for gender equality, and for the protection of children and low-income families. And in coping with the economic and social consequences of the pandemic, the European Pillar of Social Rights serves as a kind of compass for all the member states. And the European Pillar of Social Rights is in a way comparable to a new social contract of the European Union, and putting a strong focus on social justice was only possible because of the lessons learned during the pandemic. And I think this can be maybe a kind of blueprint for other models of international multilateral cooperation, to fight inequality and to increase equality and less vulnerability in our societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State Secretary. I would ask His Excellency the Vice Minister of Labour of Azerbaijan if he has any comments to make on the first round of questions. Thank you.
And I would like also to make a few comments that with regard to the new realities, and in order to address these challenges, probably there's a big need for more active and more aggressive and more cohesive use of digital and electronic services, particularly if we're talking about social cohesion, social inclusiveness, because on the example of how it may help us for social solidarity, first it will make it much easier to access different kind of social services. So it will make an access easy for vulnerable groups, and it will help to eliminate different kind of restriction, not only between the countries with the exchange of the social services know-hows, but even within the countries. For example, vulnerable groups will not need, for example, to face a certain kind of bureaucracies in different countries. They will not need, for example, we can create a new opportunities for persons with disabilities. And with the expansion of these digital and electronic services, I think we can provide better social services, will better strengthen the social solidarity between different countries. And it's not only a matter of access of social services, but it's also creating a new revenues, a new jobs, a new employment opportunities, because most of these digital opportunities will create an access to new kind of employment opportunities between the countries. And I believe these new streams of revenues between the different markets and employment opportunities can bring closer not only social but also economic solidarity, which will provide the sustainability of such kind of a social cooperation. Thank you very much.
I will now give the floor to the remaining speakers, the EU, Burundi second, Morocco, Dominican Republic, Malawi, and Ethiopia. European Union now has the floor. Or a question?
Yes. Yes. Yes, I think today a lot has been said about how COVID-19 pandemics demonstrates the interconnection between different global challenges. We can see that the global health system is only as strong as its weakest link. And that's why we believe that tackling global poverty and inequality is crucial in order not to leave anyone behind and to address future pandemics and ensure better preparedness for them. Economic and employment recovery goes hand in hand with social justice and decent work. As well as international labor standards and social dialogue. They are very important foundations to inform policy responses that are coherent and respectful of human dignity and place recovery on the right trajectory to the achievement of goals set for all of us by the agenda of sustainable development. Social protection is another very important key element of the recovery and preparedness that not only increases people's resilience, but also contributes to economic recovery. This recovery has to be fair and inclusive. The EU aims at a collective and cohesive recovery that accelerates the twin green and digital transitions. It should go hand in hand with promotion of human rights, gender equality, women's and girls' empowerment, and the full enjoyment of all human rights, good governance, and peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. A lot has been said today about international solidarity and how we should join forces to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve a transformative shift to by 2030 that would leave no one behind. The EU and its member states are fully committed to do their share. In this context, I would like to ask a question about I think one of the main questions we have to ask is how we can learn from this crisis. What lessons can we draw in order to build better uh, uh, and to contribute to sustainable development, to increase justice and resilience, and in particular how we can promote better social justice and fundamental labor standards in our future building back better. Thank you.
I think the representative of the EU, Burundi, has the floor.
Vous m'entendez? D'accord. Merci, Madame la représentante.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of my minister, who was unfortunately not able to join us, I would like to thank you for organizing this very important event, Madam Chair. I come from the ICT Ministry, and we are aware that ICTs play an important role. COVID-19 has shown just how much without ICTs, the world would have been completely cut off. But thanks to those technology, the world has remained connected. As far as Burundi is concerned, SDG 9, building resilient infrastructure that benefits all, here Burundi has 9,000 kilometers of fiber optics in a small country, which is one of the highest quotas in Africa, which has kept us connected. And this has allowed us to combat COVID and to see almost live how COVID can be tackled, how COVID cases can be traced, and so on. Madam Chair, thanks to ICTs in my country, social cohesion has been maintained and made possible. Unfortunately, the efforts that my country has made, as many developing countries have seen, has been undermined and shaken by COVID-19, which has shaken and jeopardize the efforts that we've made. But Burundi does have several initiatives underway, for example, to allow for 80% of our population who live in rural areas to use ICTs, and in particular women. Since last year, Burundi has been a part of an initiative with the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, to provide ICT access to women, and in particular, in this case, rural women. This program will last for 3 years, and Burundi, along with other countries, has been chosen as a pilot country for that project. Similarly, Burundi has established a fund to support universal access and connectivity in rural areas. And in 2 years' time, the aim will be to connect rural schools and hospitals, which is extremely important because, as I said, 80% of the country lives in rural areas. Burundi, with the support of the ITU, has established a broadband strategy which by 2025 aims to allow high-speed internet services to be delivered to more than 80% of the population. Madam Chair, we are nevertheless aware that given the damage caused by COVID has laid bare the divides that exist and the gaps that exist between countries, but also within countries. And so Burundi joins the rest of the international community in advocating for a global digital fund to allow information to pass to everyone around the world, which is extremely important. Thanks to the connectivity that we have, we've now been able to provide minimum basic services to those living in rural areas. And what we want now, and what we ask for, Madam Chair, is that we call upon the international community to make digital technologies, artificial intelligence available to improve and maintain agricultural output and ensure protection from natural disasters. And in this regard, we've joined the special focus group in the ITU on managing natural disasters.
Un minuto, por favor, un minuto. E nous comptons juste.
Moment, please. And with the collaboration and cooperation of the international community, we hope that we will be able to, above all, outfit and equip the public sector with all of these ICT tools. Thank you very much.
Morocco now has the floor. Please stick to the time limit and please ask questions or make very specific comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And on behalf of my delegation, congratulations for your leadership for this very important committee. I'll try to be very brief. I mean, the panel was really rich and the discussion is really timely and discussed many important elements for the global discussion on the recovery amid COVID-19 pandemic. Morocco fully support that the global solution to this global crisis cannot be done without an effective multilateralism. talking about multilateralism, it's also about solidarity with the most vulnerable countries, namely the LDCs, which most of them are African countries, the SIDS, LDCs, and the middle income countries. I would like to highlight also the importance and centrality of international cooperation, North-South cooperation and South-South and triangular cooperation. And here allow me, Madam Chair, to make a specific mention to the BAPA plus 40 outcome document. We believe that this document can be a real roadmap for the for promoting the sustainable recovery through South-South cooperation, and also for moving forward with decrease in the inequalities with regard to the digitalization that we just spoke about. Finally, I would like to highlight that also including women and youth, and here sharing my national experience, we really focused on innovative instruments for support of youth and women entrepreneurship, especially those in the informal sector, and help them bridge the existing gaps for finance and to develop their viable businesses during and after the COVID-19 crisis. So we really believe that including youth and women in this endeavors is really important. My question to the panel is how can we bring on board the private sector? I mean, in this global discussion on multilateralism, how can we really talk about bridging the different private operators across the world to get on board for this international efforts for the sustainable recovery? I mean, because we know that the private sector really operates within the key fields like food and agriculture, renewable energy, sustainable blue economy, and IT services. How can we bring the private sector effectively into this discussion on the sustainable recovery? Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I hope I respected the time.
Thank you very much, Morocco. I am very grateful to her for mentioning BAPA plus 40 because both of those events took place in my country in the city of Buenos Aires. I now give the floor to the Dominican Republic. Thank you for giving me the floor, Chairman. We wish you every success at the head of this important commission, and to all of the panelists, congratulations to you for your statements. We have a policy of a package of combined policies to combat COVID-19. The interpreter apologizes. The sound is very poor. We have national development strategies and a government plan. Among our policies in this package, we have an agreement with the health and security sector to ensure access to healthcare during the pandemic. We are working with the public health sector and social services to provide psychosocial services as well, preventing early teen pregnancy and providing treatment for HIV/AIDS. We have a number of institutions involved in the healthcare sector. We are also working on new models for education and for tourism and for agricultural production. We believe it is important to have a multilateral forum among states to ensure inclusive recovery. We would promote dialogue and cooperation to facilitate mobilization of necessary resources in order to overcome the current crisis and contribute to establishing measures to tackle this new reality, and which ensure greater inclusion for everyone in society, in particular those who are most vulnerable, women, older persons, youth, and persons with disabilities. And finally, we take this opportunity to call on youth leaders and gender equality leaders in Latin America and the Caribbean to participate at high-level ministerial meetings so that we can work on inclusive cooperation and sustainable cooperation for our region as we face this pandemic, which is affecting all of us in different ways. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the representative of the Dominican Republic for her statement. On my list of speakers, we have Malawi and Ethiopia. Malawi, please. You have the floor.
Hello.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks so much. The chairperson, Your Excellencies, all my seniors present, I'd like to thank you very much for organizing this session. It's very important as we are really hit with the COVID-19. I wish to share with Malawi that has not been spared for the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic, and this has further worsened the pre-existing inequalities and also vulnerability across the country, threatening to reverse some of the progress so far made in the social development. As Malawi, we are adopting policies and measures as government to protect from loss of income during the crisis and making sure that we should not even leave anybody behind. We have a number of programs which we are implementing, the village loan schemes, which aim at improving income for the rural individuals. These have been affected by restrictions of social distancing and also limited physical meetings, which can be collected by employing digital technologies, which we are using, like telebanking solutions. For instance, mobile money transaction, the use of digital technology, therefore a welcome development in Malawi and also in the rural areas. We are making sure that all these services are available in the rural areas and the network so that people should be doing business and making life easier. As a country, Malawi is also aware that technology can lift women out of poverty, and that's why we use it. We grant them access to education and also information on issues such as right and health. Technology can also provide new economic opportunities and social connectivity. Unfortunately, as I've rightly said, that the technology issues in the rural areas is so limited, but we are trying our level best, making sure that women in the rural areas are also accessing to the information during this pandemic. Your Excellencies and all my seniors, we have a number of programs which we are using, the interactive radios, especially for our children who've been closed up from the closure of schools, that are not even attending classes. So we are using the radios. The universal access of internet services is also used to benefit even those in the rural areas. We are also using a number of programs, making sure that our people, especially the Malawians, the women who are really atro-poor, coming from the atro-poor households, they are benefiting, and also they're getting information, apart from the women, but also the physically challenged people, the elderly, they are also benefiting from the programs which we've set aside during the COVID-19. We have 293,000 people who are benefiting from the cash transfer program, just to make sure that they get their services, they do their businesses, they pay for the school fees, they pay for the bundles for internet, and also they have a good home. We are having 70 out of the 293 people, households, we have 70% who are women. We've also done the support in the rural areas and 182,000 people for the urban areas. We have the trust fund for the elderly people, and for the e-learning, we are having also the interactive radio programs so that they should not even left aside due to the COVID-19. We, as Malawi government and also with our donors, we are also offering adult literacy programs and education services to individuals who require to catch up in their education status to enhance their inclusiveness and also participation in the development agenda. We, as Minister of Gender, we are everywhere informing the public that we need not to be left aside, knowingly that women are the ones who are totally challenged And we call for youth bearers to ensure that children are protected, women are protected, the persons with disability, the children rights are being there, they're accessing the general information, and the elderly, they're accessing also information. This is what Malawi are doing, and we're calling upon the chairperson and the committee and our partners and donors who've been supporting us to continuously supporting us with these programs and making sure that our people are really benefiting and are also getting information of COVID-19 so that we move in that direction as we're looking forward to attain the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We salute you and we thank you very much.
I thank the Minister of Malawi. Thank you very much for your very interesting comments. The last speaker, and then after that, I will turn very briefly to the ministers and vice ministers. I now give the floor to Ethiopia, the last speaker for this morning. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the unprecedented challenge of COVID-19 pandemic has brought multiple socioeconomic crises, mainly in developing countries. COVID-19 had affected the health system across the world and put millions out of school, shattered the global economy and devastated the lives of millions of people. This necessitates further strengthening of our commitment to international cooperation and multilateralism to effectively respond to the crisis while ensuring an inclusive and resilient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. In this regard, the fundamental roles of the United Nations system in galvanizing a comprehensive global response to the COVID-19 pandemic cannot be overemphasized. This year's session of the Commission shall usher in building momentum to combat the virus and its effects by mobilizing a collective response. We fully support the COVAX initiative and subscribe in the growing international consensus that a vaccine should be indeed a global public good, accessible and affordable to everyone, everywhere. Madam Chair, my country, Ethiopia, has taken a number of socio-economic measures to reduce the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and protect their lives. The government efforts focus on protecting of jobs and sustaining business, ensure resilience and recovery in agriculture and the rural economy, personal protective equipment productions and repurposing of manufacturing industries. Further efforts are being made to strengthen the healthcare system, availing healthcare service and critical infrastructures for timely delivery where it is needed. As part of this effort, Ethiopia has been working with development partners to curb the deadly impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human lives, the economy, and social service of the country. Ethiopia strongly believes this cooperation and multilateralism is the ultimate system to address this global challenge, such as the one we have at hand. Preserving development gains and ensuring the social well-being of our people is not something we afford to choose from, but something we all need to aspire to protect. We have no further option but to accelerate the implementation of SDGs as we strive to recover and rebuild the better in the post-COVID-19 period. Finally, Madam Chair, we believe international cooperation and multilateral approach would be the solution to the inclusive, resilient, and sustainable recovery from COVID-19 induced socio-economic crisis. We are hopeful that the 59th session of the Commission will provide an opportunity for an increased mobilization of global response based on solidarity and multilateral cooperation to the multifaceted impacts of the COVID. Let me conclude by reaffirming Ethiopia's unwavering commitment to contribute its part in promoting multilateralism for the sustainable recovery of COVID-19 induced crisis and more. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Ethiopia. Let me now give the floor to each of our panelists, the ministers and vice ministers. I'll give 2 minutes to each of you to comment on the second round of questions and comments which were raised by individuals representing different regions of the world. Minister Arroyo, you have 2 minutes to make your comments. Thank you very much. 3 brief comments. And I'm very thankful for having been able to participate in this panel. First of all, economic recovery and social justice. It's very clear that rebuilding the economy must go hand in hand with providing jobs and maintaining the most critical sectors. No one should be left behind. I think that's a clear commitment. Economic recovery, we were working on it prior to the pandemic, but now inequalities are greater and we're going to have a great number of people in critical situations and we have to focus on that. The second point is something many people have spoken about. Technology will help us get out of this difficult situation. We have to have opportunities, digital inclusion and support for new technologies. That has to be one of the key components. I believe that social policies should go hand in hand with technology, and this will create opportunities. It's very clear that when technology is unequal, it furthers the divide. But we now have an opportunity that that technology and ICT will help to reduce the poverty gap, in particular in the rural regions. It's very obvious. We see this in Latin America, we see it in Argentina, we see that people have fewer opportunities in the rural areas, and so I think we should target those areas. That's absolutely essential. And among all of the sectors and groups, and I'll close on this point, we have to focus on youth and persons with disabilities. There are a number of critical areas. Obviously, older persons have suffered greatly during the pandemic. We have to focus on childhood, on infancy, but I believe that youth, in particular young women, are having the hardest time entering the labor market and having access to their first jobs and first opportunities. And in particular, I believe that young persons with disabilities also need to be focused on. We're doing this in Argentina because we want to move forward quickly in our SDGs, and obviously we need to create opportunities so that we don't go back to the old normal, but that we create a new normal. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Araujo. Thank you very much for your comments. Let me now give the floor for 2 minutes to the Minister of Labour and Social Protection of Mongolia.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to reflect or respond to the question, how can we engage private sector? So it is a question of how the governments can be open and dynamic and be really open-minded for collaboration and cooperation with the private sector. So no one can move private sector to collaborate with the government, but the government itself can be open and have a dialogue with the private sector and really have this partnership together. So in this regard, I'd like to pass the floor back to you.
Very much, Minister. Let me give the floor now to the State Secretary of Germany. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I would like to answer to the question how to make our societies more resilient and more inclusive. And in this context, I would like to focus on the question of gender equality, because I think it's crucial, and it's even crucial more than before. And it's, of course, one of the SDGs. It's SDG number 5. And what we have seen in Germany, but what we can see worldwide, I think, is the question of domestic violence. It's a problem that is existing for a long, long time, unfortunately. But in the last 12 months, I guess it became more visible and it became clear how evident this problem is, and that has to be solved soon, because a society where women are affected by violence can neither be resilient nor can it be inclusive. And In the last 12 months in Germany, we started a nationwide campaign, for example, in supermarkets, on posters, on receipts. We distributed information about concrete support for victims of women who have who feel no longer safe at home. But we worked on it even on international level, and we put it on the agenda during our European presidency. And there we reached a commitment of a vast majority of the European member states to have a European-wide helpline for victims of violence, one number for all European countries, available 24 hours in several European languages. And I think that's a good example how multilateralism can help to improve people's everyday life concretely. And I'd like to focus on this topic even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the State Secretary. And our last panelist, I give the floor to the Minister of Labour and Social Protection of Azerbaijan to make comments or respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In my turn, I would like to make a few comments on how we can develop more comprehensive long-term policies that will enable inclusive and sustainable recovery. I believe countries should, under the current challenges, to revisit and reset their long-term priorities and demonstrate high-level commitment to these priorities in sustainable manner. And they must be done in line with objectives of social development and Agenda 2030. For example, I can share the local experience that Azerbaijan just last week adopted 5 new national priorities for the next decade. And among these priorities is society based on dynamic, inclusive, and social justice, is competitive human capital and innovation, and steadily growing competitive economy. So these 5 priorities would be redlined in all social strategies. Therefore, according to these priorities, access of citizens to economic opportunity must be equal and just, regarding of their social status and location. So then not only economic growth, but social well-being of all members will be important factor in the development. So as the economy develops, the welfare and income of citizens must increase to reach a decent level. Increased economy should create wider economic opportunities, ensure efficient employment, decent work for all groups of the population, in particular improve women's access to economic opportunities. So the social protection and social welfare of low income and vulnerable groups, people with disabilities, must be strengthened by improving the efficiency and fairness of social protection system. Of course, in this regard, different kinds of social allowances, payments, benefits, pension should be provided in decent manner. In line with this, the required social rehabilitation infrastructure for such kind of vulnerable should be accessible. And it should be supplemented by employment support program that should be gradually expanded, and social protection will be strengthened. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the representative of Azerbaijan. After these excellent briefings and the very interesting questions and comments, and then the responses from our guests, the ministers and vice ministers of state, we've had a very interesting discussion. This dialogue was very enriching, and you can count on the Commission for Social Development. We are with civil society. We are here for you. Please use us. Please use us as a transformative channel in these very difficult times throughout the world. To conclude, we are going to be showing a video, and I think that the images will lead us to further reflection. And I think this is a good forum for us to further reflect on these issues and continue our discussion. Very much to everyone. And again, I'd like to thank the panelists, His Excellency Daniel Arroyo of Argentina, Her Excellency Areunsaya Ayush of Mongolia, Her Excellency Juliana Seifert of Germany, and His Excellency Anar Karimov, Vice Minister of Labor and Social Protection of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Thank you very much to everyone. We have reached the end of our interesting ministerial forum on promoting multilateralism to realize inclusive, resilient, and sustainable recovery from COVID-19 in the context of the Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development and its social dimensions. And I thank the distinguished panelists and delegations for their participation and their contributions. I am particularly committed to ensuring that everything that has been said at this meeting will be used by the Commission. That's our commitment. And I believe that the authorities from all regions of the world have given us very clear guidelines and very clear ways of going about our work. Before adjourning this meeting, I would like to recall that this afternoon at 3 p.m., the Commission will begin its general discussion in a virtual format under Agenda Item 3A and B. I also take this opportunity to remind delegations that the deadline for the submission of draft proposals to the Secretariat is this afternoon at 3 p.m., and that the deadline to inscribe in the list of speakers on e-delegate is also this afternoon at 6 p.m. We have concluded our work for this morning. Once again, thank you very, very much. Thank you again to all of our participants, our authorities, representatives of civil society, representatives of states. Thank you very much to everyone. And in particular, I would like to make mention of the Secretariat for the Commission on Social Development, ADESA and Amine, for helping us with this very complex virtual reality. This is the only way we can work these days. Thank you very much. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.